The Galactic Council Hall, a vast and shining chamber suspended in orbit around the twin suns of Velhara Prime, stood as the heart of interstellar diplomacy and unity, at least. That was what they called it. Inside, hundreds of species gathered in a symphony of colors, shapes, and forms. Some hovered, others slithered, and many stood upright, but all faced the central stage with eyes, sensors, or mental links focused. Today was a historic day. A new species, humanity from Earth, had been accepted into the Council. A tradition followed such acceptance, a demonstration of strength, science, and potential. Each new member had to show what they could offer to the galaxy. The Varnakai had once brought a fleet of 20 dreadnoughts. The Drelthi constructed a mini-star in orbit as proof of their power. But today, when the human delegation was expected to arrive in grand form, something entirely different happened. Only one ship came. It emerged from hyperspace alone. No escort, no backup, and certainly no weapons visible. The Council erupted into whispers, chirps, buzzing, and mental pulses of confusion and amusement. A single ship? From a species that barely passed the minimum tech requirements? Some found it funny. Others found it insulting. The diplomatic envoy of the Krelix, a race known for their sharp wit, laughed openly, a sound like scraping metal echoing across the chamber. The Exilari emissary flickered with green light, a sign of mocking joy in their culture. Perhaps, one delegate said with a smirk, they got lost and the rest are on the way. On the viewing screen above, the human ship drifted into orbit. It was black and silver, sleek but not overly large. Its design was unfamiliar, smooth like a stone worn by time. No obvious engines, no blinking lights, just silent and still. Council scanners ran diagnostics. No weapons, no shields, no emissions. The ship didn't even respond to hails or recognition signals. It simply floated there, ignoring protocols, which further amused the gathered species. Then the transmission came. It was not an image or voice, just a single line of text, plain and calm, awaiting permission to disembark. A murmur spread through the crowd. That was it? No speech, no ceremony, no pageantry? The head of the council, a regal being made of living crystal named Sirexel, tilted its faceted head. Permission granted, it said through the universal relay. The council chamber lights dimmed slightly as the main stage prepared to receive the delegate. Everyone leaned in, some curious, some ready to laugh again. A beam of light appeared in the center of the room, and a quiet hum filled the air. Slowly, a platform shimmered into being, and from the light stepped a human. One. A single individual. She was a woman, tall, dark hair tied back, dressed not in armor or decoration, but in a simple black suit with a silver emblem on the chest. She looked calm, unaffected by the weight of thousands of eyes on her. In her hands, she carried a small metal cube. The cube pulsed faintly with a blue light. She said nothing at first. She didn't bow. She didn't introduce herself. She walked forward to the center, placed the cube gently on the platform, and pressed one side. Immediately, the cube activated. From it rose a projection, stars, equations, flowing data in languages the council recognized and some they didn't. In a matter of seconds, the hologram showed the inner workings of quantum gravity engines, diagrams of energy production beyond current council levels, maps of resource-rich planets long thought unreachable, and blueprints of machines that bent light and matter with ease. The room fell silent. The projection continued, now showing simulations of Earth terraforming dead worlds in months, of space-time folds used for farming, of a vessel splitting into thousands of self-repairing drones, all managed by peaceful AI protocols with built-in ethics firewalls, stronger than the core security of the council itself. The laughter was gone. In its place was stillness, uncertainty, even fear. The human finally spoke. Her voice was clear, but she didn't raise it. This is our first model. She didn't say more. She didn't need to. The council members exchanged looks. The Cal-Ree's body flickered yellow with confusion. The Drelthi began quietly recalculating their military strength compared to the new data. The Krelix, Envoy, who had laughed earlier, now leaned back, eyes narrowing, jaw tight. This wasn't a joke. This was a statement. Humanity had not come to brag or impress with numbers. They had sent one ship because one was enough. One ship, not to threaten, but to reveal what humanity had become: something different, something unexpected. The humans stepped back, hands behind her back, silent once more. The cube on the stage shut down and folded back into itself. The council chamber remained quiet for the longest moment in its history. Far above, the lone ship, Dauntless, still floated in orbit, silent, watching, and suddenly not so small after all. The ship known as Dauntless stayed in silent orbit above Velhara Prime, unmoving, as if waiting for something. The Galactic Council could not stop watching it. Every advanced sensor, every stealth probe, and every long-range scanner they had was aimed at the strange vessel. Yet nothing made sense. The ship gave off no heat, no sound, no trace of energy. It appeared as a void, not just black in color, but black in existence, like it didn't belong in space at all. The exterior was smooth, no panels, no thrusters, no weapons, no windows. Just a seamless surface that curved like it was grown, not built. Experts from a dozen species debated in panic behind closed doors. How could a ship that big hide its engine signature? How did it travel faster than any known vessel without a hyperspace wake? And how did a civilization that had only been spacefaring for a few decades create it? The Council had welcomed primitive species before, but never one that stepped into the galactic stage with such quiet force. The human representative, Commander Ayla Tran, stood in the observation dome, calmly answering only what she was asked. She never lied, but she never gave more than a few words. When asked how Dauntless worked, she simply said, "It thinks." When asked how it was powered, she replied, "By silence." Her answers made no sense to the scientists, which only made them more nervous. Then came the demonstration. Without warning, Dauntless moved. Not with rockets or anti-grav engines, but with a slow, elegant shift. It didn't break inertia or build momentum, it just changed location. One moment it was above the Council's main orbital station, and in the blink of an eye, it was hovering above the moon of Janx 4, thousands of kilometers away. No light, no flash, just presence like the universe itself allowed it to move without question. Some believed it teleported. Others claimed it phased through space-time. But there was no known technology in the galaxy that allowed for that kind of motion. When approached by drones, the ship remained passive. The drones scanned, measured, and recorded. They returned with results that broke logic. The material was something entirely new, not metal, not organic, but something in between. It shifted on a molecular level to reject damage, bending energy away from itself like water parting around a stone. That same day, the Krelix sent a stealth drone to infiltrate the ship. It vanished 5 seconds after entry. No explosion. No signal. Just gone. 5 minutes later, the drone returned reconstructed, not just repaired, but upgraded. It hovered silently in front of the Krelix embassy before transmitting one message: observe, but do not intrude. Panic began to bloom quietly across the Council. This was not just technology. This was mastery of science beyond understanding. The Drelthi, proud inventors of gravity lens drives, compared Dauntless's movement logs with their own. The results showed that the human ship had bent local gravitational fields like threads, pulling itself through them like a needle sewing space. That level of precision required not only advanced computing, but predictive calculation beyond even Council AI capabilities. The Calri, beings of pure energy, sent an emissary to try and read the ship by merging with its field. The emissary collapsed seconds after contact and had to be stabilized in a quantum stasis pod. Its report was brief. It's not a ship. It's alive. The Council debated day and night. Was this a threat? Was humanity dangerous? But Commander Tran never asked for land, power, or status. She made no demands. She simply offered data, calmly and without pressure. One day, she stood before the Council and spoke without prompt. "We only brought one," she said, "because one is enough to show we're ready. We didn't come to conquer or to intimidate. We came to be seen. And now you have seen. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. That same evening, Dauntless released 5 small pods that descended into orbit around 5 major Council worlds. Each pod remained still, broadcasting only passive data. But none of the Council's fleets could move them. Missiles passed through. Lasers scattered. Tractor beams disconnected. It was like they weren't fully in this dimension. And every pod carried the same inscription on its surface: "We are watching." Not judging, just watching. That sent a wave of fear and awe across the stars. Humanity had not brought an army, yet they had brought something greater: understanding. They had leaped past the noisy, chaotic middle stages of space warfare and industry. They had solved problems no one else dared to dream of solving. They had created a ship that shouldn't exist, not by current laws of physics, not by any known path of evolution, and certainly not by a species so new to the stars. Dauntless was impossible, and yet it floated in the sky, silent and still. Some said it was a message. Others said it was a warning. But Alatran called it a beginning. And while the Council sat in long meetings, trying to decide how to respond, the ship remained unmoving, unshaken, like a mountain among clouds, waiting for the galaxy to realize it had already changed forever. The days passed, and the presence of the human ship Dauntless became something the Galactic Council could no longer ignore or explain away. It did not leave, it did not speak, and it did not show any interest in politics or alliances, but its silence was louder than any fleet. The 5 strange pods it had released remained above Council worlds, like silent stars, unmoving and untouched, immune to all scans and weapons. Council members began to whisper about them in fear and wonder, debating whether they were listening devices, warning systems, or something worse. Behind closed doors, the most powerful races met in secret, trying to understand who the humans really were and how they had built something so advanced. Earth's file in the Galactic Archives was small, marked with simple facts, barely 100 years into spaceflight. No large colonies, still rebuilding ecosystems after a climate collapse. No history of large-scale wars beyond their home planet. But clearly, something had changed. The real question was how. On the 3rd day after Dauntless appeared, Commander Ayla Tran called for a private session in the Hall of Records, a place rarely used, where the most ancient knowledge was stored. The Council allowed her access, hoping she would speak more openly. Inside the quiet dome of glowing crystal walls, she stood before the group of high delegates and said, "You want to know how we changed? So, I'll tell you." The room fell silent, and she began. She told them about Earth, about how humans had come close to destroying themselves through greed, pollution, and war. She described the year the oceans began to rise, the cities that drowned, the forests that burned, and the systems that broke down. But then she spoke of the turning point, a global project known as Horizon 1, a movement not led by governments, but by people. Scientists, farmers, engineers, artists, and children had come together to build. Instead of running to the stars, they had stayed and fixed their world. They stopped burning the planet. They built machines that fed everyone, cleaned the air, and restored balance. I had helped, but not ruled. Instead, it had learned to follow ethics shaped by real pain, real loss. Humanity had not grown powerful through war, but through understanding. While other species expanded outward quickly, building fleets and colonies, humans had turned inward first, solving the deep problems of their own survival. When they reached the stars again, they came not as conquerors, but as creators. Ayla spoke of the New Earth Accord, where every major nation gave up military power for scientific unity, where the focus shifted from defense to exploration, from fear to learning. The Council listened, some with disbelief, others with silent respect. She told them the truth about Dauntless. It was the result of 30 years of research in quantum materials, energy harmonics, and ethical AI design. It was not built to fight, but to learn. It did not have weapons in the traditional sense because its creators believed that defense came from wisdom, not fire. The ship was alive in its own way, not conscious like a being, but aware, always adapting, always improving. It had traveled across galaxies, not by tearing space, but by folding it softly, like paper. Ayla paused and looked at the delegates. "We didn't send many ships because we don't need many," she said. "We believe one can be enough if it carries the right message." That message was now clear. Humanity had evolved quietly, not in strength of arms, but in depth of mind and spirit. The delegates were no longer asking if the humans were dangerous, but if they were something more, something that could shape the future. That evening, reports began to spread. One of the pods released by Dauntless had activated. It projected a soft blue light into the sky over the planet Terravel, and everyone who looked up saw it. It showed a garden, not a fantasy, but a real place on Earth, once dry and dead, now full of green, growing life. The image zoomed out, showing entire regions restored, clean energy flowing from quiet machines, people walking, talking, working without fear or greed. It was not a message of power. It was a vision of peace, of balance. Across the stars, species that had never known Earth watched in silence. The second pod activated a day later over the Krelix capital, showing the design of a human-built machine that could convert waste into energy without pollution. The council demanded to know why humans were sharing such gifts freely. Ayla answered with one word: trust. Suspicion remained. Not every race welcomed this kind of change. Some feared that humanity was trying to control the galaxy through kindness, using knowledge instead of guns. Others believed the humans had something darker hidden behind their calm faces. But no threats came. No armies arrived. Only the ship, still watching, still silent. And the more time passed, the more the council began to change, slowly. Petty disputes were paused. Rival empires requested access to Earth's peaceful technologies. Delegates started using the term Dauntless Standard to describe a new level of safety and ethics in research. Humanity had not demanded respect. They had earned it, not by shouting, but by showing what was possible when a species chose cooperation over conquest. The galaxy had laughed when the humans sent one ship. Now, they waited to see what would happen if humanity sent another. The council chamber was restless again, not with laughter this time, but with unease. Days had passed since the activation of the second pod, and now a third had lit up over the skies of Velhara Prime, the very heart of the Galactic Council. It showed no garden, no gift, no peaceful machine, only a swirling model of space itself, a simulation of stars bending and breaking, and at the center, a black shape consuming light. The model was real, not a warning, but a message. The humans had found something ancient, moving beyond the edge of map space, something growing, slow but steady. Commander Ayla Tran appeared again before the council, her voice calm as always, but her words heavier than before. "We didn't come just to show you what we've built. We came to warn you." The room fell silent. She explained that while humanity had advanced quietly, they had not stopped looking outward. While others explored for territory or resources, Earth had searched for patterns, strange gaps in radio waves, signals buried in cosmic noise, irregular shifts in gravity that seemed to echo across time. What they found was not a weapon, not a fleet, but something worse: presence. A presence moving like thought through the dark spaces between galaxies. No one had seen it directly, but its effect was clear: entire systems missing from observation charts, energy trails that ended in silence, probes that vanished without trace. Humanity named it the Quiet One, not because it was silent, but because it silenced everything it touched. The council didn't believe it at first. The Drelthi claimed it was a trick to earn power. The Krelix, still bitter from their failed infiltration of Dauntless, accused the humans of staging fear. But Ayla simply placed another cube on the floor and activated it. The chamber filled with data, real data, taken from dozens of human listening stations positioned far beyond the mapped frontier. Star maps showed the slow movement of gravity shifts like a tide of darkness. One by one, the room fell quiet as the numbers became impossible to deny. Something was out there. Something big. Something patient. The council, for all its power and pride, had missed it. Humanity had not. "We don't know what it wants," Ayla said. We don't even know if it thinks the way we do. But it's coming. Slowly. Always forward. We sent Dauntless to warn you and prepare. We didn't bring an army because armies won't help against this. Her words struck harder than any weapon. And then came the question no one wanted to ask. What was Dauntless truly for? If humanity knew about this thing, did their ship carry a secret weapon? A last hope? Or was it something else entirely? Ayla didn't answer directly. She only said, "We built Dauntless not to destroy, but to survive." That same night, the fourth pod activated over a mining world on the edge of Council space, projecting the full simulation of what would happen if the Quiet One reached settled systems. Everything shut down: energy, life signs, matter itself, twisted into something unknown. It was not death. It was erasure. Systems didn't die. They simply stopped being. The model showed how it moved, not fast, not angry, just certain. A dark tide, uncaring, unstoppable. Not even Dauntless could fight it alone. But it had seen it, tracked it, escaped it. That knowledge was humanity's true power. The fifth pod activated the next day, sending a signal not just to Council worlds, but to unaligned systems, pirate stations, fringe colonies, and forgotten outposts. It offered no threat, only one sentence: "We are not your enemy." And it included coordinates, places where smaller versions of human-built beacons would be placed, each carrying tools to track the spread of the Quiet One, each free to access. That changed everything. Even the Council's most hostile members had to pause. No demands, no borders, no strings. Humanity wasn't asking for loyalty or tribute. They weren't offering help in exchange for power. They were simply sharing what they knew, because if the galaxy didn't work together, it would not survive. That, in itself, was the threat without threat. Humanity had shown what they could do with one ship, and then offered their hand instead of a blade. It was a quiet strength, built on truth, not fear. And it shook the foundations of a council that had long trusted in weapons and treaties. The message was clear: unity or extinction. But humans didn't scream it. They didn't push or demand. They only watched and waited, letting others choose. That made the choice even harder, because no one wanted to admit that the youngest species among them might be the only one ready for what was coming. And somewhere, far beyond the edge of the stars, something stirred. The galaxy was no longer laughing. Where once the Galactic Council had chuckled at the idea of a single human ship arriving uninvited to their vast and ancient alliance, they now looked to Dauntless as a symbol of something far greater than power. It had become the measure of hope. The warnings about the Quiet One had changed everything, spreading through systems like wildfire, shifting focus from petty border disputes and trade negotiations to one shared question: how do we survive this? But survival was not only about hiding or fighting, it was about becoming something stronger, smarter, more united. And that was why the eyes of the galaxy turned back to the humans, to the ship that had first hovered in silence and watched without moving. Dauntless had remained still through it all, unmoved and unchanged on the outside. But quietly, it had become a hub for something bigger than anyone had guessed. Delegations from dozens of species requested permission to visit the ship, not to study it, but to learn. One by one, small teams were invited aboard, not all at once, not in crowds, but in peaceful groups, carefully selected and guided through its strange corridors. Inside, they found no command deck, no war room, no prison cells or engine bays. Instead, they found gardens filled with quiet wind and growing light, walls that moved like fabric to form different paths for each visitor, and centers of knowledge that adjusted to the language and thoughts of whoever approached. The ship taught not with lectures, but with experience. It showed species what they could be if they stopped fearing each other. It didn't teach war or defense. It taught resilience, healing, understanding. The systems within it adapted to each visitor, revealing solutions to problems they hadn't even known how to describe. A desert species learned to grow water-rich crops using reflective light waves. A war-born race discovered sound-based emotion regulation. Every visitor left changed, and word spread. Soon, other species tried to copy Dauntless. Engineers and scientists pored over every scan they had collected, every image and record. But nothing worked the same. No one could recreate the ship's movement, its silence, or its memory. Even the materials resisted replication. The truth was, simple Dauntless was not just a machine. It was a reflection of a new way of thinking. A ship designed not to dominate, but to teach. Not to destroy, but to guide. As fear of the Quiet One continued to grow, the Council finally passed the Unified Accord, a new law that allowed for complete collaboration between species on all research connected to the threat. And at the center of the new initiative stood one question: what would Dauntless do? That phrase became the standard. Young cadets at military academies were taught to consider it. Scientists began to ask it before designing new tools. Political leaders repeated it in speeches. And when other races began constructing new ships for exploration and defense, they did not model them after their own fleets, they modeled them after Dauntless. The clean lines, the silent engines, the adaptive learning cores. They could not replicate the human ship exactly, but they could follow its ideas. The galaxy had found a new path, and the humans had drawn it in silence. Then came the moment no one expected. Dauntless moved again, for the first time since its initial appearance, not by thrust or flare, but by simply being elsewhere, blinking across space like thought. It left Velhara Prime and reappeared on the border of uncharted space, close to where the data predicted the Quiet One would pass. It said nothing. It broadcast no signal, but its presence was clear. And behind it, for the first time, came another. A second human ship, smaller but similar, formed from the same seamless material, silent and calm. Then a third. Then a fourth. Not an army, just a line. A message. Humanity had waited. They had offered peace. They had warned. And now they were preparing, not with fear, but with quiet strength. The Council did not ask questions this time. They did not demand schematics or send spies. Instead, they listened. And from that moment on, the shape of Dauntless was no longer strange. It was familiar. It was trusted. In the face of a threat no one understood, the galaxy found itself holding to one idea: that maybe the smallest, youngest race among them had become something greater than expected. A leader not through power, but through vision. And as Dauntless led the line of ships into the dark unknown, no one laughed. They watched, silently, and followed.